good afternoon, good evening. We have people connected to this panel all around the world in different time zones. This is the first English panel in Cerrito Forum 2021, and we are honored to listen to our partners with the topic Stoplight Around the World, Experiences and Results. In this panel, the goal is to talk about and to present the results that different partners achieve around the world using this tool. So we are happy to have participants from the Stoplight Global Network as part of this session. Fundación Paraguaya is proud to host this segment as part of the Cerrito Forum 2021. And this year's slogan is, "Let's rethink a society without poverty, post-COVID-19, from Paraguay to the world." Thank you again for being here. And it's going to be my pleasure to hand over the direction of this panel to Larry Reed. Larry is the director of the Poverty Stoplight US. Prior to this, he served as the Senior Fellow for Financial Inclusion at Results, a citizens advocacy group seeking to bring about legislation and policies that contribute to the elimination of extreme poverty around the world. In this role, he also directed the Microcredit Summit campaign, a global movement started by Mohammed Yunus and Sam Daly Harris. Larry also worked for 20 years with Opportunity International, including 5 years as their Africa Regional Director and 8 years as the Senior of Opportunity International Network. Larry has authored the Global State of Ultra Poverty, the State of the Microcredit Campaign reports from 2010 to 2016, and has contributed to several books on finance and the poor, including The New World of Microfinance, Serving with the Poor in Africa, Globalization and the Kingdom of God, and More Pathway Out of Poverty. Mr. Reed is a graduate from Wheaton College and the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Luis Fernando, and great to be here with all of you. Bienvenidos a todos. Lo siento por hablar en inglés, pero si hablo en español, te lastimaré los oídos. So we will move ahead, and what I will do, we're going to have a conversation about the Poverty Stoplight and how it works in different contexts around the world. And I want to take all of you with us on this journey that Luis Fernando and Martin were on after they developed this tool that was useful in Paraguay with microfinance clients. They wanted to see, would it be useful in other parts of the world? Could the same tool work in many different contexts? And so I'm going to introduce you to different people from different parts of the world, and I'm going to do it sort of one at a time, ask them to introduce how they are using the Poverty Stoplight, and then go on to the next person. So I'm going to start with the first place outside of Paraguay that Martin started to develop this when he was a doctoral student in Tulane, and came in contact with a local organization called Roots of Renewal. And we are honored to have the executive director of Roots of Renewal with us, Kiana Calloway. And Kiana, we're very glad to have you here. Kiana, if you can't see how fit and trim he is, but it's not something you expect from someone who grew up eating etouffee and Creole food. But Kiana loves the culture and the food of Louisiana. Kiana is someone who has experienced injustice in his life, was convicted of murder at the age of 16 for something he did not do, served for 17 years at a penitentiary before his case was resolved, in one of the most difficult penitentiaries in the entire United States, actually. And he came out with a heart to serve others, to really see how he could use his experience to help other people not have to experience the same things he experienced. So Kiana, your story is an inspiration to us, but why don't you tell us about Roots of Renewal, what it does, and who you are working with there in New Orleans.
Oh, definitely. First off, before I get started, I'd like to say good morning to everyone who's a part of this panel. I see a lot of colleagues and friends on this call, Mr. Andy, and I would like to thank Mr. Martin for actually developing such a mechanism that can help many people, not only in his own turf, but also spread this love and intelligence and knowledge across all hemispheres of life and all cultures of life. So with that being said, thank you guys for allowing me the opportunity to sit on this panel this morning. Well, such as Larry just spoke about, my name is Kiana Calloway. I'm the Executive Director of Roots of Renewal, NOLA. Roots of Renewal is operating out of two areas right now, which is New Orleans, Louisiana, and also Pittsburgh. Well, in New Orleans, Louisiana, we cater towards formerly incarcerated young men, the age of 18 to 26, returning home from incarceration. Our job is to offer these young guys soft jobs, understanding of the storm. With the storm. So basically what we're doing right now is we're working with young men re-entering society, and we're giving them these soft job skills, not only to prosper further in the employment sector, but to also have the opportunity to physically and psychologically re-enter into society. Now, using the best part about the Poverty Stoplight, by using the Poverty Stoplight, we use the visual mode of Poverty Stoplight. On our first initial interview, we used the model to identify each individual returning home and a part of the organization, their elements of poverty, which understanding that the poverty in Paraguay or in other areas of the nation is different than the elements of poverty in Louisiana. So adding, have you been convicted of a felony or impacted by the criminal justice system as another element, so that we can kind of holistically wrap around these young men after re-entering society. And inside of the 16-week program, we use this method 3 different times. Every quarter of the participants program, we give them the element to see where they were, how we can transfer those reds and those yellows into greens, those reds into greens within the first segment of the first quarter of the actual participation of the program, and we turn those reds into yellows and those yellows into greens. But the best thing about it is watching these young men see how they elevate, to see how they can eliminate dysfunctions on their life map in so many different ways, because it gives you you structure your life map. And that's what we do over at Roots of Renewal. We don't just get these young men inside of the space and say, okay, we're going to put you out here and work on this house, or we're going to sit you in this classroom and give you a curriculum on personal development or conflict resolution. What we do is we help these young men develop their life map. Some of these young men come in from serving juvenile life, going in at 12 years old and coming home 2 weeks before their 20th birthday, don't understand anything about responsibilities or understanding anything about being able to obtain any place of employment or housing or any of these avenues. But in 90 days, when they go back and review their video from the first initial interview to the second interview within 90 days, and they say, wow, I've accomplished that. So that's a joy in itself. In partnering with Poverty Stoplight, it shows that this is how we can, as a community, wrap around this pandemic, other than COVID, but wrap around this pandemic of people returning home from incarceration. And it's been a wonderful Louisiana. Something that we're going forward.
That's great, Kiana. And what I like about how you're doing it is you experience what it's like to come out of prison and have a challenge finding a job, having a challenge recreating your life after growing up outside of society. And you've taken that experience and using the Poverty Stoplight, you're using it as a tool for giving people a pathway that coming out of prison, it doesn't have to seem impossible anymore, that there are steps they can take, and you help them break it down through the stoplight into, okay, this is what I'm going to work on next. And then when I'm done with that, I can work on this. And you even videotape them so that they can see themselves and they can see their progress. So it's a wonderful way that you use the tool there.
Yes. And I feel like the camera is therapeutic. You know what I mean, Larry? Yeah. Like being able to see sometimes, and actually in a lot of these interviews and camera and videos that we take, some of these guys break down to their lowest fragment because they do not understand they didn't understand how hard it was going to be once the transition becomes reality. So once they come home and figure out that the state of Louisiana is releasing young men out of their penal institutions without any support. Right. So I feel that it is our duty as community leaders, as community liaisons, as abolitionists, or as just reform individuals, to put ourselves in positions to where we can do our best in helping these guys re-enter. And the best thing about it, Larry, like I'm actually at the Louisiana State Capitol right now. We just signed 5 criminal justice policies into law this year that will help the transition of young men and older men and women in the state come home and have adequate protections coming in. But now is to the point to where getting out and using the poverty stoplight, it can speak volumes next session. When I come through the state legislation and say, okay, these are the numbers that we are dealing with. These are the resources that we really, really need. And this is how we can implement this and put this into these guys' lives in real time. So
I'm going to come back to you on that. Yeah, I'm going to come back to you on that point, because that's a key point on how the stoplight not only leads to individual change, but also to systems change. So I'll get back to you. But I want to move on to Andy Cox now. Andy, Martin, the next country that he looked at, I mean, there are other countries involved, but next in terms of the group here is the UK. Would the poverty stoplight work in a country like the UK that has a pretty well-established social safety net? Is this something that would work in that context? And Andy has always been about fighting injustice in many locations. He's worked as a lecturer and a professor in sustainable health systems in the UK and in Spain, and was a director of business for a mental health care provider in the UK. But then he became a social entrepreneur and set up a group called Signal. And Signal got connected with Martin and the Poverty Stoplight and looked at how the Poverty Stoplight could come to a context of people living with challenges in poverty in the UK, in Newcastle. And Andy, I don't want to forget you're also a proud father. Your wife works in the National Health System in the UK, so you bring a whole set of experiences to working with people there who have challenges, who don't have the same opportunities that you and others may have had there. Tell me about the client base you work with and what Signal does there in that context.
Thanks for that introduction, Larry. Yeah, we've started in 2018, and we were known as Poverty Stoplight at the time. And we're a social enterprise, and there's probably a colleague of mine watching this at the moment, Joint Director Robert Webb, who was instrumental in building a relationship with Martin Burt many years ago, before 2018. In reality, Larry, we've had a very interesting journey, because the word poverty creates some real stigma in the UK. So poverty is really used by politicians, policymakers, and the press. And the reality is nobody looks at themselves as being in poverty. However, we quickly changed the name with the help of our community. Now, our community today, for example, who use the methodology, are from the sort of community sectors, voluntary sector housing, regeneration, people who've been ex-offenders, faith groups, local authority or local government, and also sports foundations. Just like to say that as a bit of name dropping, we've onboarded Liverpool Football Club Foundation very recently, so we're proud of that. And I think the reality of poverty in the UK was an issue that we looked at purely as an economic term, and most of the United Kingdom regrettably still got it as an economic term. But what Poverty Stoplight has done is helped not only ourselves refocus and recalibrate how we look at things, but also the organisations and partners that we work with. They no longer look at these issues as an economic issue, but look at it as a multidimensional issue, very much the way that the methodology is built. I think the most exciting bit is, for the first time ever in my career in mental health and education, the methodology puts the person who's affected right at the centre of the process. And that is something you'd think is a normal thing to do, but it's unique for the United Kingdom because too many professionals and too many policymakers make decisions for others. This has changed the whole cycle of that, both at a micro level and obviously the use of data at a macro level to influence policy. So it's made a massive difference already in the UK. We started in earnest in 2019, had some effect obviously in 2020 and 21 with the pandemic, but it hasn't curtailed the use of the methodology. And in fact, you know, using the methodology remotely, but using facilitated processes, Larry, we've been able to help many, many families and individuals through the pandemic to have some hope that they can work on things as they come out of the pandemic. So all's not lost, if you know what I mean. I've got lots of stories to share, but I'll just stop there because it's there are other colleagues on the call.
Well, thanks, Andy. And just to follow up one bit, so how did you actually do the facilitation? Because the Poverty Stoplight involves, usually there's a mentor working with a participant who takes the survey, but there's someone to guide them through it and then help them as they set their priorities to, you know, just guide the process. But during the pandemic, you were in lockdown in the UK. You couldn't go out and visit clients in their homes or have them come to your office. So how did the partners working with you, how did you help them initiate those conversations?
Absolutely. I mean, we had to go right back to the start and connect with every partner and talk to them about how they could actually make contact with their clients, because face-to-face was something of the past. So what we had to do is train every facilitator in using the methodology, either by telephony or by using Zoom, or engaging with households who may have some technology and connectivity at home. So the important thing is that they engage the households and use whatever technology and connection they had and build it around what they had. Okay, the methodology facilitated took a little longer than normal, but what that did is create a greater connectivity between the individual and that organisation, because that individual felt that I'm not being left behind. I think there are many organisations that we're working with, partners today, who have never known what it's like to do face-to-face signal surveys. They've been introduced to during the pandemic and are past masters at using it like that. So as we're moving towards a new place with the pandemic, we're finding many organisations are looking at a more blended approach, a combination of face-to-face and a continuation of remote working.
That's great. That's great. And thank you. You not only developed it there, but you trained a lot of our other partners around the world in your experience. So that was very helpful.
Pleasure.
I want to move on now to another question that came up in how the poverty stoplight might be used in other contexts was, would private businesses be able to use this? Would this work in different types of sectors that aren't social development? And we have with us Elisa Aragon, who she is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Nelixia. And Elisa has an interesting background here. She has a degree in chemistry from a school in Versailles. And then she also got a degree in entrepreneurship and innovation from a school in Paris, and combined those into, after an internship in the world of perfumes, has started Nelixia, which works in creating sustainable and ethical sourcing of raw materials and products that go into perfumes and cosmetics. So, Elisa, when I think about perfumes and cosmetics, I think about wealthy people and high-end products. How does the poverty stoplight come into that context? How are you using it in your work?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Larry, for the introduction. Well, it is hard to believe that all the ingredients that are used today in the perfumery are produced in third world countries. So that's why Poverty Stoplight gets into this business, and we are really at the source of the production of the perfumes. So we do raw materials. We work with thousands of producers among Latin America, and we will buy the raw materials they will produce, and we will transform that and sell that to the industry of the perfume and cosmetics and flavors industry. And well, our business is to process those raw materials, but to also do the sourcing of those raw materials with the producers. So we work with a lot of producers at the source in Guatemala, in El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Peru, and Paraguay. And of course, when you work with producers in our countries, poverty, it's everywhere. So what I always say is, like, when you open your eyes, you cannot close it anymore. So you cannot properly work, ethically work, and sustainably source ingredients if you don't tackle poverty. So this is why we work. Like, we are really not an NGO. That's not a business. But to have a sustainable business, you have to have a sustainable relationship with your producers. And removing poverty is one of the most important things to do with them. So reducing poverty is one thing, and that's something I learned with Martin, that it's not only income. And when you will ask me what is the most impressive thing I've learned with the Stoplight, with my communities I work with, is that in fact, income is not the most important thing for them. And it's wow, like, you're talking poverty and you will think that every poor people wants more income, and actually not. And actually there is so many other things that are important for them before getting into more income. Of course, income is always an issue, of course, but to think that you can remove poverty of so many other dimensions, I think that's the first big innovation about Poverty Stoplight. Yeah. And you have to explain that to the world and explain to the consumers that you can tackle poverty not only by income. And I think that's powerful. Yeah. That is like a beautiful light in the world today, right, saying, hey, we can do things differently, and it's not that difficult.
Right. That's beautiful, Elisa. And your producers are selling their materials to some of the biggest cosmetic companies in the world, like L'Oreal.
Yes.
Are they interested in the lives of the producers? Are they interested in helping their producers get out of poverty?
Yes, well, they're even paying part of Stoplight directly. So we do have a project for L'Oreal, and it's for the patchouli production, which is an essential oil used in perfumery. And the oil is used in Acqua di Gio of Armani for men. So it is really a brand that it's known worldwide. They are doing a little bit of promotion of the sustainable ingredients. And of course, we not only do Poverty Stoplight, but we do have fair trade relationship with them. We have biodiversity protection, a lot of things. But so we have a sustainable project with them. And besides this very fair trade relationship, they wanted to do more and to do more social actions. So they said, Elisa, can you please propose a social project for us? And I have so many clients asking, can we do social projects around the communities? And actually, of course, I have ideas. And of course, they have ideas. But I think the real question is, our ideas are really suited for the communities? Why our ideas are the most suited? So what I liked about Poverty Stoplight is that it helped me to pinpoint the real needs of the communities and of the people. So the producers are going to get empowered of the situation, but there are a few indicators that need like external donations. And that's where all our clients come into play. And L'Oréal said, okay, we will do Poverty Stoplight with them, and we will see which indicators they need support. And they are adding additional income to the communities by social projects, thanks to the results of Poverty Stoplight. So they are saying, we want to have producers, we want to remove poverty amongst our producers. And that's powerful, because sometimes you can have a client saying, we have a school, we have drinkable water, but how sustainable is that in time? So reducing poverty, eliminating poverty amongst the producers of the perfumery industry, that's another kind of level of solutions.
Yep.
So yes, they are really doing the promotion.
That's great. That's great to hear. And it's exciting to see with your work. I mean, so often the relationship between the big companies in the West and those who produce the raw materials is one of exploitation, of getting the lowest price they can so that all the profits go outside the country. And your work is helping them see how their work can empower the lives and help people live decent, livable, thriving lives in the context where they're producing the product. So I really like the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
And I want to move on now to Erin Morris. Erin Morris works with Children International. She's one of the newer members of the Stoplight family. And Erin is the Senior Program Officer for Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning at Children International. Erin's worked prior to this in the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua. She has her Master's in International Development from the University of Pittsburgh. But Erin, Children International is an organization that's been going for more than 80 years. And you've had sort of a well-honed program and a strong monitor and evaluation part of that to constantly improve the program. So why did you see the need for introducing something like the Poverty Stoplight? And who are you working with as you use this tool?
Great, thank you, Larry. So we are piloting the Poverty Stoplight in Children International, Guayaquil, Ecuador. And so we have an excellent team of people there, and Jefferson, who's been our mentor and leading this initiative in Ecuador, is also on the call. And they've been the ones really driving this forward at the local level. Children International works in health, education, empowerment, and employment of youth, children and youth. And so we really saw that the Poverty Stoplight could help transform the way that we work with families. So by understanding better the needs of the families and putting them at the center to drive their change could really help us improve where we're investing our resources and programs. And when you think about health, education, empowerment, employment, all of those things are part of the different dimensions of poverty. And so it's really been able to help us kind of hone in on where we want to focus. And I think from the area of monitoring, evaluation, and learning, traditionally, it's a very extractive industry where you're taking data from people and then the leaders are making decisions based on that data for how they want to impact and do work in communities. And instead, this is really flipping that around and saying, actually, families can own their own data. They can use that data to determine their priorities and drive their own decisions. And so it's been a really neat process to see how families use their data to start making changes, and then how we can still use that data to help better allocate our resources and prioritize and support families.
That's great. And what have you seen as you've looked at the data from the families? Has anything come out that surprised you, or maybe showed you that they had priorities that were different than what you thought were their needs?
Yeah, I think it's helped a lot to start to see. I mean, one, we started our piloting this right when the pandemic hit. So we've had a very interesting experience where, families amidst losing their jobs and having reduction in income, were still able to grasp on to their priorities. So one family, she wanted to start her own business, and she was able to adapt that to be done in a virtual state via WhatsApp. And she was able to generate income in order to advance her priorities. She saved, she created a bathroom for her family, she created a separate bedroom for her daughter. So amidst, a really challenging year where we just assumed, we're probably not going to make much advancement, we saw families really being resilient, persevering, and figuring out ways to use that information to drive their own change. And in addition to that, it helped inform how we adapted during a pandemic. We work in the area of education, and we learned very quickly through the COVID stoplight that we implemented that a biggest need of families was internet for their children to continue to participate in school, as well as better support, parents being able to better adequately support their kids to continue education in the home. And so we were able to adjust our resources to really focus in on that, as opposed to maybe how we thought we should be working in education.
That's great. Andy, how about you? Anything that surprised you as you or your partners were surprised by as they looked at the data they received from the stoplights taken by their participants?
Well, yeah, it's a really interesting story that lies behind this as well. When we launched Signal back in late 2018, Martin Bird came across and did a presentation, and he gave this example about a lady with no teeth and poor dental hygiene. And I thought, I was actually embarrassed at that moment, thinking, no, not in the UK, not a good example. But our first partner, we went to see our first partner after a few months and talked through data. And the chief executive said to me of Citizens Advice in Newcastle, who look after 80,000 people a year, said, the most important indicator for me is dental hygiene. It is the one significant piece of data that tells me or indicates to me that somebody's spiraling into poverty. So there you have it. We learn every day by the methodology, throwing out surprises. And they are surprises because of what I said before. The professionals don't really listen to the needs of the individual. They think they have the answers. And this proves that the professionals can only facilitate.
Yep, that's great. Thank you. How about you, Kiana? I mean, you've experienced what many of the people in your program have experienced, but has anything surprised you as you've gone through these interviews with participants?
Well, the most surprising thing is that I can't believe that a system cannot have its citizens' best interests at heart. You know what I mean? After, and it's hard to have guys. It's hard to have guys return home and just wondering where they're going to sleep, or where they're going to find a place to work, or where they're going to get insurance if they make it, just a common code. So basically, I think that listening that these individuals, once they discuss the elements of poverty and not understanding that I can fix this on my own, but but thank you for giving me this guide. Thank you for giving me this map. And it really shows the resilience in young men and women and families, because we've been doing the community survey since 17, and understanding now that people are ready to identify their elements and they're ready to figure out what will be the right mechanisms. But the most familiar attribute to that piece is that once they see it and they identify it, that's the push for them to go further. Mm-hmm. So that's the most similarities that I see within the actual method as its own, because the methodology is so awesome. The way that it's set up, the way that it's structured, and being so flexible enough to add elements of that can survey and cover so much ground. Just understanding that clean drinking water in Flint is not like clean drinking water in Louisiana.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we can identify that and be able to put that in the right form of fashion to where we can holistically wrap around that. So just the similarities are awesome, Larry, and the actual point of being that hub to link and connect these dots is great within itself.
Now, I told you I'd come back to you on systems change. So you've used this data. I mean, the story you're telling us now, you've told to members of the state legislature, you've told to the governor. What changes have you helped to bring about in Louisiana as a result of your interaction with your participants?
Well, just recently, just today, today, we passed HB 707, which is fair chance in hiring, eliminating the discrimination in hiring practice throughout the state of Louisiana. And with the data of Poverty Stoplight, which allowed me to understand that out of 150 individuals that we did the survey on just during COVID alone, it was like 89% of individuals who say that they cannot obtain employment due to the discrimination of having a past criminal history. So having this data available for Representative Matthew Willard and Royce Duplessis, we were able returning home from incarceration, can't find a safe place of employment, then we need to kind of figure this out and see what can we do about this. So that data was very, very
Sorry, you're breaking up a bit there, Kiana. So, but one thing that Kiana is also, there you go. Thanks, Kiana.
That data was so intricate in the movement. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now. But I just want to say that, you know, you've gotten these bills passed in Congress. You also a statewide ballot initiative on returning vote, the vote to people who've, I don't know, people in other countries don't know, but people who have been convicted of felonies in many states don't have the right to vote when they come out. And
yes.
So Kiana just led a process with many others on a ballot initiative that was approved in Louisiana, restoring the right to vote for people who have served their time and come out of prison. So great work there. We've got some questions coming in.
It actually affected over 400,000 individuals.
That's right. That's right. It affected our last election too. So that was great. Questions for Elisa. People have written in on the chat. So they want to know more about this relationship between Nelixia and the producers and then your buyers. So do the producers get to know the buyers at all, or is Nelixia the only one the buyers know? How does that relationship work?
Yes. Well, I think today everything has to be about transparency.
Yep.
So we do put everything into a short circuit value chain. So the idea is, of course, that L'Oréal knows exactly who are all the producers doing all the work on the ground. So we see us, Nelixia, like a bridge between the two worlds, which is the clients, the perfumery industry, and the producers on the ground in our countries. So we see us like a bridge and a transparent bridge. So of course we have L'Oréal that came to Guatemala, visit the communities, and the idea is also to explain the producers where the product goes to. So that's why at Nelixia we say purpose start at the source, because you have to give purpose to the producers. You just not going just buy the product they're doing and not telling where it goes. So everything it's about communication and give purpose to the producer, saying this product goes to a high-end perfume, and also explain the clients, L'Oréal and all the users, that what are they using, who is behind the product, how it's produced, how the families live, because they have to understand that. Because if you don't understand the source, where the product comes from, you cannot change things. So yes, everything is really transparent, and it has to be like that.
No, that's great. That's great. And Aaron, I want to know, what are your thoughts in a child sponsorship organization? People donate to individual, they sponsor children, but the organization pools that money to develop projects that benefit not only the children, but the entire community that the children are a part of. How do you see the Poverty Stoplight going from beyond the pilot, once the pilot is done? How do you see that moving on to how you do your designing your programs and evaluating their effectiveness?
Yeah, great question. Some of that is to be seen. We're really in this learning phase, but it has potential to inform how we focus our resources. One of the things that we've learned so far has just been a completely different switch in mentality on how we work with families, local staff, as opposed to having the solutions, recognizing that families have the solutions and our role is to facilitate that together. So that has potential to change the way we work. And, recognizing that poverty, in order to influence children, you have to work with families, and families really are the drivers of changing the situation of their children. And so figuring out ways to better empower families to make changes where they see as most important for the lives of their children, and figuring out how we are situated to support that process. And this remains to be seen, but a lot of my peers here have talked about, looking at how it can have a broader change in the community. We saw in just the first year of the pilot that families on their own came together to identify shared problems and shared solutions. We did almost nothing to facilitate that process, and it just happened. And so there's a lot of opportunity for the community to come together and drive changes they need in their community. An example that we saw in the first year was families advocating to get internet in their community, and then the cost of that internet, and it seems like such a simple thing, but that process of collaboration and people coming together to drive change really has potential to shape the way we work, as well as identifying other local actors, the government, other nonprofits that have power within that community, and figuring out how we can use that to advocate for changes needed that impact the families and communities where we work.
Yep, that's great. We talk a lot in the community, our Stoplight community, about individual agency leading to collective agency, and I think you just described that very well. That your participants, once they see their own situation and can see that there are others like them, then they on their own will start organizing together. How can we address this challenge? We're all facing it. We're stronger together if we take it on. And then they have the power to tell others, like the government, here's what we need. So Andy, I want to come back to you. You said you had lots of stories of changes. Maybe we can finish up by going back to the individual level, and what sort of change does the Stoplight make in people's lives?
If I answered that by giving an example of a young man who um, approached a citizens advice agency about government were going to take him to court for potential benefit fraud, and he had all kinds of things happening in his life, a real sort of tangled mess of issues. And in my past profession in mental health, professionals might have labelled this individual as a complex character. In other words, we haven't got time to work all this through, we'll just give him therapy. What this young man did was the agency that he attended said, we'll take your case on and we'll help you. But it would be lovely for you to go through signal process so we can help understand what's happening in your life, i.e. we'll deal with your emergency now, but then we'll deal with your recovery from all the other complexities that were happening. So they won the legal case, and the next thing he did was took signal, and what it did, it was in front of him, it helped him untangle all his life complexities and issues, and the organization facilitating this was also able to see his life a lot clearer. And this young man had assets in his life. He had lots of greens, which he didn't appreciate at the time. But the simplicity of the methodology got this young man hooked on the concept of, I want to change my reds to ambers and my ambers to green. And this young man has taken it now 3 times and is in a much, much better place. And he has come back to this agency to ask to take it time and time again. Not the agency chasing him. That is real agency and somebody getting the simplicity of a personal development plan, let's call it, but something that worked for him, that he could identify his own priorities and not somebody else identify. So for me, that gives it goes to the heart of the benefit of this on a micro level, that it helps individuals tell their story, untangle all the mystery, and for them to get a journey ahead or sight of a journey to improve life.
Yeah, that's great. And that, someone like that, the complexity of their situation, there might be different agencies that might have pieces of it, but it's hard for any of them to see the whole. And I think that's what the stoplight does, is enable the person to be a whole person and then make their own choices. And you all have beautifully illustrated the individual change that can happen as people see their situation and make their plans for what they can do next, how people then can collectively start addressing some of these challenges, and then how others, even international companies, can help support the plans that these people develop. And then how that information people can organize to make systems change, can actually change the law in their state or in their country in response to the challenges that people have, and the information and the priorities that they're showing. So I want to thank each of you, the panelists, for we just got started here. I could talk with all of you for several more hours and learn a lot more. And what I really like about this work in the stoplight is these social entrepreneurs I get to meet in the process, people who are very creative, who really care and love people as individuals, who see them as whole people, who see them as people with agency and ideas and capabilities, and that just want to facilitate a process that brings that out. And each of you have your own creative way of doing that, but it's your love and respect for individuals as people and families and what they can contribute that brings you to this place where I want to initiate a process that helps them improve their own situation and come together with others to make permanent and lasting change. So thank you very much for sharing a little bit of what you're doing. for the creativity you show in doing that. And thanks to all of you who joined us on this panel discussion. And we will look forward to you joining us again on, if you're in Cerrito, there will be at the Cerrito Forum, we'll continue with other discussions. If you're part of the Stoplight Week, one of the Stoplight partners, we will have a session on communication coming up in a little bit. But it's great to hear how the stoplight is working, and to see something invented in Paraguay is now having implications and creating change and facilitating progress for people all around the world. Thank you for joining us.